So good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining the Ask Anything Joe session. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Laszlo. I'm the president of the PMI Budapest Hungarian chapter based in Budapest, Hungary. And I'm very delighted to welcome Joe from the United States. As I mentioned before, this is 11 o'clock in the morning there. Thanks very much for accepting my invitation, Joe.
Hi, Laszlo. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks very much. And guys, before we get started, I'd like to share with you a very, very short story, why this conversation, why this meeting, and what PMI Budapest would like to achieve with all these lunch and learn sessions and all these different webinars. If I'm very honest with you, back in 2019, early 2019, our team came up with this idea that let's reach out to a large number of people who are not able to join our sessions here in Budapest, Hungary in person. Although Hungary is a fairly small country, but if you would like to attend a professional event, it takes a little bit time to come from Debrecen or Szeged, Pécs or Győr or any other big cities. It takes 2 hours to get to Budapest, then you have to pay for the parking, then you attend the meeting, then you drive home. So to be honest with you, it can take a little bit more than 4 or 5 hours. So that was the reason why finally we came up with this approach that, okay, let's organize something which is pretty unique. I have to admit, back in 2019, January 2019, so that's what I'm talking about, this is something very new for many of our chapter members. The first time I organized the first lunch and learn session, it took place in February 2019. Something like 80 people joined the session. I was the speaker. Then in March, I organized a second lunch and learn session, 125 people. Then 1 month later, 200 people. And finally, this year, the COVID-19 situation created a completely different environment. So everything is virtual. Everything is based on either WebEx or Microsoft Teams or Zoom and all these things. So many things are virtual right now. And why this is it, and I think I don't need to explain that, but to be honest with you, I have been working from home for nearly 7 months now.
Yes.
And I guess, Joe, you are working from home right now. So our life has changed completely. On the other hand, PMI Budapest invited a number of guest speakers to these events. And today, this is going to be a little bit different than what we organized before. And why I'm saying this is slightly different, because to be honest with you, I reached out to PMI, I got in touch with Sunil, and Sunil came back to me saying, hey, Laszlo, Sunil Prashar, the president and the CEO of PMI, came back to me that, hey, Laszlo, I would highly recommend that meet Joe, and you can ask anything from Joe. And that's why finally we agreed with Joe that, okay, let's come together. A month ago, we agreed that we are going to meet today. Today is the 1st of October. And luckily enough, we received a number of questions from the audience. But before I turn over to the questions, guys, I'd like to introduce Joe, and I'm going to give you a high-level overview who he is and why this is important to meet Joe and ask him anything. To be honest with you, the most important thing is that in my interpretation, Joe as the Chief Operating Officer, so the COO, he is responsible for all global customer services and operations at PMI. And he's also responsible for overseeing the global customer experience, including the segments, industry groups, and geographic regions PMI serves. On the other hand, he also manages global customer engagement, global solutions, and global operations aimed at providing the very best products, services, and support to project managers throughout their careers. And last but not least, 50 people on the line, that Joe brings over 30 years, including business and strategic planning, enterprise system implementation, and new business development. I think more or less that's a very, very quick intro about who Joe. And I would really appreciate if you could say a few words to the audience and just add some any additional information you might think worth to know about you, Joe. Over to you.
Sure. In terms of my background, I can summarize my 30-year career that you referred to as a tale of two careers. I had an earlier career, a company career. I worked for Arthur Andersen, Andersen Consulting, and Unisys. And then I had a small company career where I worked for 4 startups as CFO. And those experiences, big company, and then the real entrepreneurial experiences is what I brought to PMI. So I'm a blend of a couple things there. And it really helps, those things help me make the operations of PMI better, in the context of our transformation and what we're trying to finish up with our 2.0 transformation and gear up for a new 4.0 strategy that the board is going to be reviewing in the 23rd of this month. 3 weeks. So.
All right. Okay. Excellent. You already mentioned something which is very interesting and very important for this audience. And again, I always have some personal stories about these things. Actually, I joined PMI more than 12 years ago. I was the vice president of the local chapter for 3 years. Then I became a PMI region mentor. So I kept this position for 3 years between 2012 and 2015. Then from 2015 until 2018, I was a region mentor. I was responsible for 11 countries in Eastern Europe. Then I became the president of the local chapter. But why this personal story is important for me, not because of me, but because I saw PMI from different angles. So I was just a PMI member, let's put that way. Then I became a local chapter member. Then I became a global volunteer. So I attended different meetings, including the Region 8 meeting, the EMEA LIM, the North America LIM. Then I attended the planning sessions in January in Philadelphia. And that was, I think it was sometime in 2016 when I first heard about the PMI strategic transformation journey. I think that was the time when PMI started to talk about this so-called transformation journey. And this is basically my first question. Where is PMI in this strategic transformation journey, and what are the most recent changes at PMI? And I think this is very relevant for this audience, and I would really appreciate if you could share with us a little bit more information about that.
So in the broader context, we started the transformation program in May of 2018. So we're a little, 2 years and 3-4 months into the transformation. The finish of the transformation was always planned for 2021, and it looks like we're going to finish mid 2021. So we're at the back end of it, right? So what's most recently occurred is we've delivered many foundational back office type systems that you wouldn't see as a stakeholder of PMI. So CRM system, ERP system, build a new digital, the foundational pieces of a new digital platform. And those were the big things that came in the last, I'll say, 7 or 8 months. At the same time, we're transforming our product portfolio and bringing new products to the market. So we're well known for our PMP offering, right? That's well known all around the world. We're a membership association. Everybody's familiar with those two things, but we're broadening by strategy. We're broadening our different ways of working, our approach to traditional project management, to agile ways of working, hybrid ways of working, and then beyond, right? Sunil's brought a whole new perspective of what he calls Agile plus plus. So that's more visionary, but not too far down the road. The other part of the story, it's not just products, it's really in response to what we've heard from the stakeholders, what they need for their careers. So how do we broaden your technical skill, which are the things I just mentioned, and then broaden your soft skill, your management skill, your strategic skill, which we call power skills. So it's those two things that we're broadening and deepening. So if you came to PMI, as you did years ago, and you clicked on our thought leadership, and maybe there was something about Agile, and you double clicked on it, there was nothing there from a PMI perspective in terms of a journey that you would take. I mean, we had the ACP, we still do have the ACP, but it didn't have a full career journey for agility. So that's just an example of what we're trying to fill. So when we speak to the market about where we think the market is and where it's going, we want to be able to provide an offering, either something we develop ourselves or we partner with others. So that's another key component of this, the development of partnerships, which is on the back end of the transformation, we're building it more and more. We did acquisitions, which is an extreme form of partnership, but we're building partnerships with other associations and people that are thought leaders in terms of design thinking, We're bringing new offerings out to the PMI community with people that have the expertise, right? So we're not going to have the expertise in everything. So I'd say that combination of things is really going to be important for our future in providing a better career journey for existing stakeholders and the young ones that are coming into the universe and into the work world.
Mm-hmm. Thanks very much for this quick recap, and why this is pretty interesting to listen to this short summary, because back in 2019, I was fortunate enough to attend the PMI North America Leadership Institute meeting. If I remember well, more or less a year ago, we came together in Philadelphia when PMI celebrated the 50th anniversary. And to be honest, this was a big surprise for me, because this was the very first time I had the opportunity to visit the PMI headquarters. And that was the time when somebody took us around and they opened the door and they say, hey guys, don't look around here because this is a little bit crowded, but these guys are working on the new ERP system, the CRM system, and there's so many different things. And they showed me a pretty big wall with all these little post-its and where we stand now and the value proposition and all these things. And to be honest with you, it was a big, I would say, on one hand, it was a big surprise for me to look at all these things, and on the other hand, I was so delighted because suddenly I felt that okay, so many things are moving at PMI, so many things are changing, and you just mentioned one very good example that now PMI is coming up with new offerings, new services, new products, and making new partnership with different partners now. And why this is interesting, because this is what we are trying to achieve here in Hungary, that we are not really competing with the other companies who are working on the same market, and they do have more or less the same vision what we have, but we try to cooperate with them. Okay, now this is pretty good segue to my second question, and many of you who are listening to this conversation, you might ask, okay, where do these questions come from? And the answer is pretty simple. We opened the Slido before, and I also received a number of questions via email, so thanks very much for that. But the second question, it has something to do with PMI's most recent annual report, and I would like to ask you the following, that in PMI's most recent annual report, you are quoted as saying that the PMI of today is not the same organization you joined in 2015. What has changed? You already mentioned a couple of things, but in the last 5 years, what are the most, I would say, dramatic or most significant changes at PMI?
I think you saw, at least visually, one of the changes, right? The way we work as a group, as a team. Our culture has changed dramatically from a more passive culture to a much more active, engaged culture. We've embraced agility within our transformation and how we work and how we engage with one another, cross-functional teams, tearing down the silos that were there before. And I would also add that the transformation itself was very broad and very deep. There is not an area of PMI that has not been touched by the transformation. So it was very ambitious, and many of the things that are coming out of the transformation now are the customer facing or the stakeholder facing things, right? Whereas maybe in the last year, it's not so obvious, right? But that cultural change is probably the biggest thing. When I was making that quote, was really thinking about how people work with one another. It was much more formal, tie kind of we didn't literally wear suit and ties, but it felt that way. It was okay. It was fine. I mean, it wasn't the right culture for dynamic change. So you really have to build the team. You have to build the trust, the teamwork, the accountability. They were key. There were three big ingredients for us, and also a customer centricity approach. An outside-in approach. I think we suffered from an inside-out approach, and maybe many of the folks on the call here today would agree with that. I certainly did. To flip it all the way to the other side is a very difficult thing to do. So the other thing was innovation. So you'll see with the products and services and offerings that we're opening, there's no boundaries. We're only bound by what we want to be bound by, meaning what our stakeholders need in their careers. That is a very exciting part, the innovation part, because we never really had that. We just put that in about a year, 2 years ago. We've had an innovation team. It started with one person, as you would expect. But yes, there are some of the big changes. And you see, I think, more and more coming out into the environment from PMI. We have a new CEO. He has a different perspective on things, a different perspective on communication, very much a two-way engagement. That's a big change, on top of all of it, right? And then he's also brought a new focus on regionalization. So when we conceived the original transformation, we did not have a regionalization approach in it because we had a lot of work to do, as I was explaining. It was really broad and deep. But when he came aboard, he added that in. So we've set up 8 regions around the world, including Europe, where we just recently hired Ashwini. And that regional approach, we're seeing a big impact already in terms of our engagement with the different regions around the world, listening to what stakeholders need, and many of the needs that you always think you know all the needs, but you don't. And having that representation in region is a big change. And it's interesting in the respect that it's challenged the transformation itself, because we added it while the transformation was underway, and it's really challenged the teams in terms of what they're delivering in a good way, right? I mean, some days are harder than others in that regard, but that challenge really makes the teams much more focused, much more customer centric.
It's again, it brings back good memories from 2019, and you just mentioned, for instance, wearing a tie, a white shirt, and suite, and all these things. And although these are just small things, but I remember back in 2019 when PMI introduced a new brand, the new logo, the new look and feel from one day to another. So actually, I attended the North America LIM. We shut the doors something like 7 o'clock in the evening, and the day after in the morning, this was completely different. And this is massive. So not only the colors and the logo, but the whole look and feel.
Everything.
And I still remember that Sunil appeared on stage and wearing a jeans and a baseball cap and a hoodie with a big logo, and everybody was saying, huh? Where are we now? What's happening here? And to be honest with you, we tried the same approach here in Hungary in 2019, because we organize a conference every year. And I had my hoodie on, I had my jeans on, and everybody was, I wouldn't say shocked, but they were quite surprised at, oh, is this the same company? What's wrong with you guys? And more or less we explained that, guys, so many things are changing. The world is changing, and now we have to lead the change. We have to make sure that we stay relevant and we provide value to our stakeholders. And by the way, you just mentioned Ashwini, and that's something what I wanted to ask you. That, if I remember well, you wore the hat of interim managing director of Europe last year before PMI recently brought on Ashwini to serve in this role. And the question is, what do you see as opportunities for stakeholders in this region in particular? So I'm sitting here in Budapest, Hungary, in Europe. So let's focus on Europe. So the question is, what do you see as opportunities for stakeholders in Europe?
So the regional engagement is a very important component of the answer to your question. So having Ashwini on board, building out a new team in Europe. We have a chapter team that many of you are familiar with, that we're going to build out a broader team to serve the market and the stakeholders in a different way, support the ATPs, the chapters, engage with the organizations that everybody works for, to understand what they need, to have a different level of engagement with organizations, not just with the individuals. It's a big part of the new strategy, that we have that engagement, because it really supports the individuals at the end of the day, if we have a strong relationship with your company or your government. So those pieces have to be put into place. So that engagement will be different. It'll definitely feel different. I expect from Ashwini, and he's working on his 90-day plan. So I'm expecting he'll have an approach to Europe, a 5-year plan, or at least a 3-year plan. A 5-year plans anymore are difficult because things change so dramatically. But he already comes in with a point of view. We've talked it through, but I'm looking forward to what he brings forward. But but it is a different level of engagement, much more offerings coming out of PMI to support the careers of our existing folks and for the young generation that are coming in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the young generation. I think this is crucial. This is very, very critical. Although I don't consider myself an old man, although I'm 55. But I already have 2 daughters. They are studying at the university. The next generation is coming to the job market, and I think this is crucial for PMI. On the other hand, you also mentioned that it's very difficult to work on a so-called 5-year plan because so many things are changing, and very often people are talking about the VUCA word, that this is a volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous environment. And by the way, coming to my point, which is also very interesting because so many changes are happening in 2019, in 2020, and obviously 2020 is a very, very difficult year for many of us. As I mentioned, I have been working from home for 7 months. I have no idea when I'm going to go back to the office. My entire company works from home. PMI works from home, if I understood well. So my next question is actually related to that one, that with PMI's transition from in-office operations to 100% work from home operations, can you share how PMI pivoted so quickly? And why I'm saying that, because I remember 2020, March 13, here in Hungary, I was watching the television 9 o'clock when the Prime Minister announced that from Monday onwards, digital learning, distance learning, stay home, social distancing, and so many things has changed. And within, I would say, 2 weeks, PMI changed so many things. But I would like to know, what was the secret behind it? How did you do that?
Well, I'll say the number one answer to that, there's a couple answers, but one is that culture change that I described. We were ready in many ways in terms of how we worked with one another, to be agile, to respond to the situation, a very unique situation that everybody in the world had to deal with. We were ready to make that move. We did things in the transformation already prior to that set us up for the success, right? So it wasn't that we planned the transformation in anticipation for a pandemic. I don't think anybody did. However, the work that we did do, the plumbing work, I'll say, the digital application architecture, the new data architecture, working everything on the cloud already. We had all that stuff set up. New partner for exam delivery, Pearson VUE. We brought them on board last year. They had capabilities to do the examinations online. So a number of those things came together and made us ready for the moment. The digital part of our transformation allowed us to do that and do it quickly. Now, it wasn't without pain and heartache and long hours, and everybody that's on the call here knows what I'm talking about. It was difficult to shift the whole entire company to working from their homes, customer care center, answering calls when people have grandparents and kids and all kinds of different dynamics in the house. At the same time that we're replacing all of our systems, we had a huge deliverable at the end of June and then another one in August on these back office systems at the same time. So that was, if you look back on it, it was, I'm quite proud of the team for what they were able to do to continue to transform a company while you're at home and working from home. And, of course, we added scope. We kept adding scope to deal with the situation, right? It was necessary scope. So the same people that were transforming the company are the same people that had to deal with everything that you're asking about, like the changes that were made. So we had to make a couple adjustments in our schedule and, the timeline of some of the products that we're going to offer to the market, but it was out of necessity that we had to make some changes. So.
Don't get me wrong, it's not a criticism, but I was a bit worried about PMI at a certain point because I knew what's happening behind the curtain, and suddenly COVID-19, just jump on everything. And I started to wonder about, oh my goodness, PMI is changing so many things behind the curtain. So many things are not really visible for the different stakeholders. I mean, because you work for PMI. I know because I was fortunate enough to visit the global operating center, or the mothership as we call it. But for so many people, this was not really obvious that these things are changing, and suddenly COVID-19 comes in. And obviously the question is how is the health of the organization, how the colleagues are doing, and how is the general health of the PMI organization at the moment?
Are you referring to like a financial health question, or the physical health, or both?
First, the physical health. So that how is the team doing? How is the mood, and how they are coping with all these challenges? Because on one hand, okay, PMI is a non-for-profit organization. It has more or less 450 or even 500,
500.
direct staff, but more importantly, we have over 600,000 PMI members all around the world. There are 307 local chapters, 10,000 volunteers. So this is, I think we can say very bravely that we are one of the largest PM project management focused organization. So what is your take on this? How is the health of the organization at the moment?
I think we're stronger than ever because of all the things that we've been through and all the transformation activities that were underway anyway. It's not to say that in the second and third quarter that people were suffering from a fair amount of change fatigue. Some burnout, people worried about burnout because they were working so hard on these initiatives and then being burdened by the challenges of COVID. So, we recognize that early in the summer. We made changes to our plan to leave some breathing room so that people, can get their work done, support their families, whether it's young children or parents or grandparents. We recognize that, we made changes. So we did a lot of different things along the way, similar to what you do with your digital engagement, right? So Sunil started a coffee break it's a coffee break session. It was a very casual session, started in early or mid-March, maybe the week after we went home. And basically every week, the whole company can get online and exchange just, fun, non-business oriented conversations, checking in with everybody, making sure everybody's okay. And everybody had a chance to contribute. And I think it really went a long way for people like me, actually, that I never really worked from home. Just every once in a while I would. It was a big change for me personally. And, I felt that with others, right? Others were, it's a major change. And my kids are teenagers now, so they're a little easier to work with. I couldn't imagine having young ones like, babies, 2-year-olds, 5-year-olds. I have 4 kids. If this COVID situation happened 10 years ago, I mean, I don't know how I would handle it. So, knowing that was going on, and the team and Sunil, the executive management team, made the right adjustments and changes and listened along the way. But yeah, it wasn't without, a lot of struggle. I mean, there was a lot of struggle in there. And I believe, this is my personal philosophy, you can't achieve much in life unless you have some struggle, right? That you learn how to work through it and persevere and have that resilience. And I think that's the piece of it that, you can't see or measure very well, but you can when you see the outcomes and, the team highly engaged.
Thanks very much for that, and it does resonate with me very much because I have 2 daughters, although one of them is 21 and the other is 14, so university and primary school. But my wife is a primary school teacher, and she worked from home for 3 months and sitting next to me and teaching, reading and writing and mathematics and all those different subjects. And this was tough, I have to admit. But I think there is one thing which is also very important, that we are impacted by this whole situation. All of us are impacted. So we go through all these challenges together. And in the meantime, just for those of you who are submitting additional questions, and just for your information, this is a live conversation with Joe from from the United States, and Laszlo sitting here in Budapest, Hungary. So we are going to give you the opportunity to submit your questions through the chat window or the Q&A section. So please type in your questions. We are going to look at that in the last 15 minutes. But as I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, we collected a number of questions through Slido before, and I would like to go through those questions first. Then I'm going to turn to the QA section. Okay, moving on. What are some of the latest products and services from PMI that our stakeholders should look forward to? And why this is important, because so many people are talking about it. Okay, PMBOK Guide 7 is coming. It's already in the pipeline. So many people are asking me, hey, Laszlo, when PMBOK Guide 7 is coming? But then suddenly people ask me, okay, is it really true that I can, take the PMP and the ACP and CMP exam from home? Is it really true that this is online now? And can you tell us a bit more about these latest, products and services, what PMI stakeholders have to look at?
So I'll start by stating that we're committed to our traditional products and offerings, right? So the PMP and the PMBOK Guide, we continue to invest and improve those products. There's a new PMP exam January 2nd. Many of you know that already. PMBOK 7 is coming out next year. The success of the PMP continues around the world. I can tell you that from a demand perspective, we see that continuing to be strong even during this period. Part of that is due to the fact that we were able to deliver the examination online. Thank God we were able to do that, because we didn't have the ability to provide. Many people were in the pipeline. They had prepared, they had done the training. Emotionally, they were ready to do it, and we were faced with inability to have exam centers open. So we quickly moved to that online instructor-led delivery, and it's been accepted, and people really like it around the world. Is it going to be the only way that we deliver? No, we're going to have a multimodal approach to examinations going forward. You'll still have, once things kind of settle down, their exam centers are up and running again around the world. So if that's your preference, you can do that. If your preference is to be online, you can do that. So when you get into membership, I'll talk about membership. The team has been working on a whole new approach to membership over the last year in terms of designing it and starting to implement it to really assist in your career journey. It's called Navigator, to help people in different segments of their careers navigate through what kind of skills and training that you do need in order to get to the next level, whether it's a certification or a micro cert or just training, right? It doesn't have to always be a certification. So we're very, very much open in that regard. And connected to that, we did an acquisition about this time last year of a company called Discipline Agile and another company called Flex. And the purpose of that acquisition was to fill out what the market had said to us, that we had a hole, right? We had a gap in our ability to offer, agility to our stakeholders. Our stakeholders were going elsewhere. They were going to Scrum, Alliance. They were going to SAFe. They wanted to work with us, but we didn't have anything for them. So that acquisition put us in a position to be able to offer a new Agile career journey this fall, which is based on Discipline Agile products and Flex products. So Discipline Agile is an approach to agility that's been tried and true with the company that we bought. They were a consulting firm. That actually we transformed them as well, which I didn't mention, but they were a consulting firm.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh, did you hear that? That was my, I must have sat on it. Oh, it's my phone or my watch, Siri. I must have pressed on it. But we transformed that company, the founders, and integrated them into PMI so that the experience is seamless. You'll see that as we go forward, the training experience, the different certifications that the Discipline Agile career journey provides. So we're really proud of that, being able to flip it, make it a PMI. So it feels like PMI. It's not, you don't have to be a consultant to experience it and use it and improve your career with it. And Flex is a intellectual property and an idea and an approach to agility that is close to safe, right? So it takes safe and it really extends what safe is. And we're happy to continue to work. We're open in terms of our approach. We're not competitive necessarily with these other players. Discipline Agile is an open platform, a choice platform that enables you and me to pick the right form of agility instead of being stuck into one way of doing it. It depends on what you're working on. You can try this or that or this or try 3 different things, right? And then being able to scale it through the flex dimension. So the flex products come in a little bit later in the year. I'm sorry, first quarter 2021. So let's stay tuned for that. Also, we're delivering a Brightline. Some of you are familiar with Brightline. Earlier in the year, prior to COVID, we decided we would start providing a micro certification for a transformation, so people can understand transformation, get themselves up to speed, and then have a journey. So we have an initial product that's out there in the market as a pilot. We'll be developing that, not developing it, just tweaking it in the market and getting it ready for a launch in Q1. So that's a big change because we hadn't provided any products out of Brightline previously. And then we have a design thinking product. We worked with Tom Wujek. This goes back to the partnership question. We partnered with Tom, who's a well-known thought leader in design thinking, and we're delivering a training into the marketplace. So it's a power skill type training, so our stakeholders can understand design thinking and apply it on their projects. So that's just a couple examples of things that are out there.
Thanks very much. And this is pretty interesting. And again, it brings back a very good memory for me that back in 2019, I attended the EMEA LIM. For those of you who are not familiar, what LIM stands for Leadership Institute meeting. And that was the first time I met Sunil in Dublin, sometime in May 2019.
That's right.
And why I'm talking about that, because this is the very first time that Mark Lyons attended the EMEA LIM. And I think on one hand, he was so surprised because this is, I would say, a culture shock for Mark, because there were so many volunteers, including myself, and then they were on stage talking about disciplined agile and what's coming and what this choose your wow approach is all about. And suddenly after this session, everybody was just knocking on his door saying, hey, Mark, I'd like to know more about it. I'd like to know more about it, because this is something really missing from the PMI offering. And this is a good thing, but I need to know more. I need to know more. So that's also something very important. But you also mentioned that so many things are changing, and that's the next question, what I have here, that PMI offers many products with an offering that is constantly evolving. That's I think it's a true statement, but the question is, how do you manage the varying needs of your customers with products that reflect PMI's core values? So many things are changing. As I mentioned, this is really a VUCA word, what we really live in. So we are no longer talking about it, but this is actually happening. So many things are moving around us. But the question is, how do you manage the varying needs of your customers with your different products?
Right. So this goes back to earlier on in our transformation, we partnered with Josh Seiden, who's one of the authors of a book called Sense and Respond. And he advised us in terms of that approach to product development, that sensing and responding and constantly developing and tweaking and listening to the customer and making the product better, particularly we're talking about digital products. We've embedded that into our operation. So that's how our teams work. So we get things out into the market, we listen, we change, we make it better. So it's a much more advanced version of what we've traditionally done, where every number of years you'd have a new PMBOK guide. Every number of years you'd have a new Pmp exam. This is a continuous change model, so a big cultural change, and that's how we're working through it. Now you can't shortchange the fact that we had to put all new systems architecture in place in order to enable this as well. It's not just the people culture, but making sure that we invested in those systems and ways of working. So that's we're capable of doing that now. We're actually delivering on that. And then all of our innovation comes through an innovation cycle. and it gets delivered to this new operations platform.
Mm-hmm. 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 And another thing, what people are really interested in, and this is much more related to our profession, project management, that people would like to hear from you. What do you see ahead for the project management profession and the future of PMOs? And so many people are asking us the very same question. Okay, what about the PMOs? Are they still relevant? Do we really need them? Uh, is it really the way we work in the future, or PMOs are dying? So this is the first part of my question. What do you see ahead for the project management profession and the future of PMOs?
So we feel very strongly in the future of the profession, now more than ever, right? With all the change that's going on, the project managers are in the middle of an idea and taking it to reality. The difference in our approach going forward is we realize that you can't just do it one way, right? There are multiple disciplines and multiple ways of working that we know people use in the market, and we want to be the go-to place for those different ways of working. Certainly traditional PM. Give you an example, we're working with two construction associations to develop a PMI offering for construction, right? So bringing that into the marketplace with a partner is something that we're bringing forward. And, also, so that's another dimension. That's more of an industry dimension. So we're looking at the fact that the specialization is needed, right? It's not just the generic one-size-fits-all PMI. It's got to be much more responsive to needed in the industries and the regions. So we feel really strongly, because of how we're transforming, that we're going to provide those capabilities into the marketplace. So that's going deep on PM. PMOs, they've always, they sprung up for a reason, right? Back in the day. And they'll continue to be needed as long as they evolve as well, and not be stuck in the old ways. Being much more dynamic, adopting agility. It's happening already. It has happened already. It's not in every company, but we're from our research, we know that you need to make those evolutions in the way you operate. So we provide through our thought leadership and more through our offerings, the tools that are needed, right, for transformation. Discipline Agile is an example, right? They have a toolkit that really helps you pick the way of working and how to work with the teams. So that's our view. We see a lot of demand still for traditional PM, and it's just not going away. And change is just, if anything, is accelerating, and it needs to be managed. And you really need to drive more and more value out of each dollar an hour that goes into change. The world demands it, right? There's a lot. If you look around the world and you look in the context of maybe UN Sustainable Development Goals, we have a lot of challenges, and project managers help deliver on those challenges and the ideas that solve those problems. So we don't see any shortage of the need for project managers going forward. We just see the need for the project manager to do more, to take on more, because it's just demanded right now.
I think this is a very important message, and for those of you who are listening to this interview, I really appreciate this, Joe, because this is exactly what I see here in Europe, and this is exactly what I see here in Hungary, in Budapest, and this is what I see at my workplace, because the demand for project managers is increasing from year to year. So right now, we do have a department, for instance, where I work, and we have 40 BAs, business analysts, and by the end of 2020, we would like to have 80. Then on top of that, we have a pretty large PM community at this firm, and we would like to double the number of PMs working on different initiatives, different projects and programs. And you also mentioned that there is a big demand for the PMs on the market at the moment, that this is what you see basically from the PMI headquarter. I think you already answered my second question, which is related to PMOs, because you touched upon that. But let me make sure that I ask you this question because it came in from somebody, that how will the PMOs change based on the new ways of working and changing expectations of agile delivery? So many people are saying that, okay, agile is here, so we don't need a PM, we don't need a PMO, and it has a dramatic impact on the PMOs. But what's your take on this? How do you look at this situation?
Yeah, well, I'll give you my answer from a couple perspectives. Companies and governments, they still want to know what they're going to get, when they're going to get it, and how much money it's going to take, right? That's not going away. And that's one of the challenges of agility, right? Scaling agility. Everybody sees in the marketplace that scaling of agility is a difficult thing. And the traditional thinking that we have and we bring forward with project management, married together with agility, is a really nice blend, right? To answer those management questions, to provide them what they're looking for, and not just trust me, we're going to deliver. We hear that all the time, and we see that all the time, and it happens in our own company. People management wants to know. Stockholders want to know. Citizens want to know that you can't just say, trust me, we're doing a Scrum project. So we do see that you have the evolution of meeting that need is where we're going. Like, how do you blend these different ways of working and still provide for all those stakeholders? It goes back to stakeholder management at the end of the day. Everybody has a different need, right? It'd be great if everybody wanted the same thing, but it's just not the real world. I mean, you try your best to orient all your stakeholders as closely around your communication as you can, but it's not always the case. It's usually not the case. So you have to make those adjustments. So it's a question of evolution, and that's why we feel strongly about bringing in new disciplines, new way of working. An agile, discipline agile approach is just one good example.
And before we turn over to the QA section, I'd like to ask you a very complex question, what we received through the Slido just recently. And I have to make sure that I articulate properly this question. So sometimes we have to make decisions very quickly nowadays. And as you mentioned, PMI is changing and evolving, and there are some significant changes. So with PMI going through transformation, can you share an example of when you had to make a quick decision that made a significant impact? Quick decision, significant impact.
Yes. So I'll go back to the thing that comes to mind quickly is this COVID situation. So we had operations in China, and we were looking at the global situation with COVID, and started in early February. So we put a team together, a task force basically of executives and people in the company that are keeping an eye on the COVID situation. And I'll tell you, the week that we closed down, this happened in other companies as well. We just looked at each other one day, and we knew that we had to make that move. And we worked on a communication plan. And by the next day, we were telling the whole company to go home, work from home. Trust us, right? Because the capability is there for us to do this. A lot of hard work had to go into doing that. And then going a couple of weeks down the road, going to making that change to delivering the examinations online through an online proctor. That was a quick decision as well. And I mentioned a little bit earlier, it was not without pain, right? You make quick decisions. Not everything works out perfectly. We had a huge spike in volume into our call center. Many of you may have experienced it. It was very different. There was a trend around the world that was happening. It wasn't just PMI. Call centers were overburdened, but we were overburdening at the same time that we were trying to shift to exams online. At the same time, we were delivering new systems, and it was complicated. And every day we were making different decisions, customer-led decisions, to make sure that we were providing the right level of service. In this case, in my example with customer care, it took us a couple months to work through it, but we did. We got the right resourcing. We have a partner. This goes back to transformation. We have a partner that helps us with call center peaks, right? We've worked with them through the years, and we were able to meet the peak need that was facing us. And all the different challenges of people working from home. So I would say every day during that situation, we were highly agile, making customer-focused decisions.
Thanks very much for being very honest, because we have so many people on the line who are watching and listening to this conversation, and I have to be very honest with you. Sometimes I receive the different kind of questions. What's happening with the PMI customer surveys? Everybody started to have a better understanding. Hey guys, what's going on? And obviously, we had to explain that, look, guys, we are going through so many difficulties at the moment. Not because PMI only, but because the current situation, as you mentioned, the peaks, everybody is working from home, suddenly online, proctored Pmp exams are taking place. So suddenly the workload became much higher. And obviously the question comes, what would you do differently if you could go back in time? So you just mentioned, for instance, this situation with your Chinese team, but what would you do differently if you could start all over again?
I guess if I could go back in time, if I go back to February and I knew this was going to happen, I think we would have spent more time recalibrating our plan then. We ended up recalibrating the plan early summer, and then getting the team ready psychologically for it. I don't think anybody was really ready for any of this. So, it's more around getting people ready for the experience. If I could do something different, if there's some magic wand, that's what I would do. And because along the way, we figured out, different people have different needs, obviously, but different people responded to the situation in different ways. And I think that variability is something that I would want to have better time to plan for. But unfortunately, we couldn't. Can you still see me? Oh, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me now? Can't see. Looks like it dropped. I wonder if my line's dropped. Okay. I can't hear. Okay. Yeah. Looks like I'm still connected. My ear. This is still connected. I see you can hear me. I can't hear anything. Is Laszlo still on? Okay. Well, this is another great experience from the COVID era, right? A little technical difficulty. Looks like everything's working on my end, but I can't hear anything. So, and I can't see anything. So whatever you were showing, I can't see that anymore either, Laszlo. Laszlo dropped. Yeah. Okay. It's not the first time this has happened in the last 7 months, that's for sure. I'm on vacation, by the way. I didn't fail to mention that earlier. So this is the first time I've taken off, probably like many of you, all year. So now I'm the host. You are now the host of the, wow. So I'm at the beach and it's a beautiful day and I'm happy to be here. Keeps me out of the hot sun for a while, and then I'll go to the beach later. Make the most of it. So how much time we have left? We have 4 minutes left. I'm not sure if we covered everything, but I can tell you that we have other new products that are coming down the pike as well. That would be something that you wouldn't expect from PMI. Certainly agility would ring true, right? As in terms of an offering that we needed to provide to the market. This new product, citizen developer product line that we're bringing forward, is really supporting that developer or no code, low code market with certifications that give companies and management assurances that when they do code in no code, low code, if you will, that all the controls and quality aspects are in place. So, the expectation is that this whole low code, no code thing is finally really going to be delivered into the marketplace. I know we've been talking about it for a lot of my career, rapid application development and so forth in the earlier years, but it really is something that can be done whereby I can build my own applications. A 51-year-old man, certainly the young generation can do that as well. So the big challenge has been IT departments really being ready to take that on and take on having the controls in place. And that's what the system developer product is going to bring into the market. So we're testing it right now, and it'll be out soon. Let me read what we have here. So the line got dropped. Okay. All right. And I wonder if there's any other items. If anybody have a question, I could just read it off the chat. I can't hear anything, but I can respond that way. I hope, actually, it's just a well wish. I hope to see you all soon. Last time I was in Europe, I was in Poland last November, and I'm sure if we didn't have COVID, I'd be in Budapest right now. I'm really looking forward, as everybody else is on the line, to that face-to-face engagement again. I'm thankful for the technology and our ability to do what we're doing today, but I really look forward to the PMI events and how we delivered them in the past. So I hope you guys do as well. I am going to say farewell. Oh, so you didn't see 3 questions in the chat? No, I did not. I don't know why, but I did not. Okay, I see one now. Question is, how do you see the new ATP policy and how PMI will enforce it for chapters to abide by it? Well, so the new ATP program, it's new, is in the market now. And the goal of that, in terms of a transformation perspective, was to deliver an experience for a candidate such that they had the best chance of passing that exam. That's it in a nutshell, and that the experience is uniform around the world. What we had 2-3 years ago was a lot of variability in experience, a lot of variability in pass rates around the world, and we wanted to ensure that everybody had the best chance of passing the exam. We didn't change the exam, we didn't change the difficulty of the exam, but we know that the preparation for the exam, if it's done the right way, gives people the best chance, and we owe that to our stakeholders. So that's the basis of why we built the ATP program up. And I think the implication of the question is that some of the rules that we're putting on chapters. So the chapters working with ATPs rather than actually being an ATP, even though a chapter can sign up as an ATP, but we encourage chapters to work with the ATPs going forward for Pmp exam prep. We're also delivering discipline agile training through our ATP network. So that's going to be a new one as well. So we'll continue to add to that offering, and it'll be really good for the ATPs because we're bringing them more opportunities to train. We really appreciate 50 years of partnership with what was REPs, now ATPs, and we look on building that, right? And I think that expectation is not necessarily there in the market yet, but we intend to work differently with ATPs going forward in a much more engaged way with other companies, working with their clients to provide our products and services and offerings. So, Laszlo, I see you.
I'm back.
Hi.
I'm back again. I hope you can hear me and see me. Can you hear me?
I can.
All right. Okay. I apologize for that. I had some technical difficulties. Actually, I got disconnected and I had to restart all over again. But thanks very much for staying with us. Unfortunately, the time is up, but as I promised, we received a number of different questions from many of you, so I'm not going to run away. I'm going to save all these questions and I'm going to share these questions with Joe, and I'm going to ask you to give us a quick feedback about these questions because these just came in recently, but unfortunately the time is up and I know you are busy with other things today. So if you don't mind, I'm not going to ask any further questions, but I'm going to share all these questions with you. And
Okay.
I'm going
I can
to
answer the
you
one
to
that's in the
answer
chat
them.
right now, if you don't mind.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
If you do have some time, then go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just get quickly. So it's a question about is PMI focusing too much on young people? It used to be the Professional Association for PMs, providing knowledge and experience. And aren't you worried that PMI will lose its appeal to professional segments? So I'm not worried. And the reason is this. When you hear that we're focusing on youth, it's because we need to, right? So we're going to be able to do both, right? But we do have a gap. We recognize in our transformation, this 2.0 transformation, in the next gen segment. So we built a lot of the things around that generation, and then there's a generation that's coming after it, right? You know, our kids and grandkids, right? PMI, if it's going to be here in another 50 years, always has to have a focus across those age spectrums, just like any other company. We just hadn't in the past had that focus. We were hyper focused on the professional segment. So it's an additional thing that we're doing, and it's a needed thing. So it's not taking away from our focus on professionals. It's just an add. So we're adding more resource capability to do this, and you'll see when the new strategy comes through in 2021 that there is a piece of that focused on youth. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you very much, Joe, and I thank you for accepting my invitation, and I thank all of you who joined this live interview with Joe Cahill, the Chief Operating Officer of PMI. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And as I mentioned, I'm going to share with you the incoming questions. Then, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to send you the PDU claim code because as normal, this is a PDU eligible event organized by PMI Budapest Hungarian chapter, powered by PMI Global Headquarter. Again, Joe, thank you very much for your time. I wish you a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Laszlo. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you soon.
Bye.